So as most of you know, the Samsung Galaxy S8 was one of the craziest phones that Samsung pushed out in 2017, and I think it was one of my favorite phones of all time, and especially one of my favorite phones of that year. And in the later part of 2021, we haven't really gotten any new news, there's been no updates or anything like that, but like I've stated, this was one of my favorite phones of all time, and we have to talk about it. Now, one thing that continues to surprise me about the Galaxy S8 is the body. When this thing came out, I was like, man, this thing is going to be lasting forever, and it was right and wrong. It was right because the body still doesn't seem old. I mean, you have a beautiful 5.8-inch Super AMOLED display. It feels tremendous in the hand. You do have a little bit of bezel at the top and bottom, but it's really not that big of a deal. You have a USB Type-C port, headphone jack, and a microSD card slot. Those three things right there are things that probably will just sway people into just nostalgia, because now there's rumors of these phones removing their USB Type-C ports and going portless. So having this type of I/O is amazing, and it's one of my favorite things about these phones for sure. Now you have that glass back on the back, which still feels really good, and you do have that single camera setup. Now that camera was, I think, pretty good when it first came out. 12 megapixel 4K at 30, kind of like a dual camera setup up front, and I think it was a pretty decent sensor. There was no 4K at 60, but this was 2017, and the iPhone 7 Plus at that time, which was its main competitor for several months, that really didn't have any capability like that either, so it wasn't really a big deal. And in my opinion, I still think this camera looks pretty decent. My Galaxy S8 has a ton of burn-in, but the photos that I've seen of it have been pretty good, so the camera quality was always pretty decent. But the one thing that I loved about this phone was just the build quality. When I feel this phone in the hand still, I mean, it feels almost exactly like my iPhone 13. Now, one thing I hated about this phone was the software. I just was not a fan of One UI. I'm still not a fan of One UI at all. I wish Samsung could go and make some improvements there and go more towards stock Android, but they are making improvements for their whole entire software longevity, which is good. This phone did not see any of it, so you're really not getting any capability there, but it's still a very good phone in terms of, I guess the software versions that it got. And there are some people out there who probably prefer One UI, so I think that's a pretty good thing when it comes down to it. Performance-wise, Qualcomm Snapdragon 835 chipset with 4GB of RAM, and again, nothing crazy there. It's pretty much the same thing as we expected, but as I mentioned, when you get a phone like this, you are pretty much set for a long time. And that's the thing about these phones, the performance of this phone still isn't that bad, but you are just stuck on such an old version of Android that it really doesn't make too much sense to even use this phone anymore. For one, it doesn't really have as many features as a Galaxy S21 or One UI 4 or whatever it is now, but you're also not getting those software updates that the apps are getting. So what does this mean? Well, essentially a phone will get X amount of updates, but the apps will still be supported for several years, but then the apps start dropping support of other applications, and then you're kind of stuck in a situation where the phone's not getting updates and the software is not getting updated either for the apps. So I'll definitely tell you, performance wise, I think this phone is good, but I probably wouldn't recommend picking it up anymore. And the battery at that time, it was actually a pretty decent sized 3000 mAh battery. Right now my phone has degraded a ton, so I probably wouldn't recommend anyone to pick it up, but I think ultimately this phone is kind of like a historic phone in so many good ways. I love this phone for the capability that it brought, and I think it had a lot of capability at that time. I just wish Samsung would support this thing a little bit longer, or I wish we were able to custom ROM this thing a little bit easier. But other than that, I think it's a tremendous phone, and I would just pick it up just to have it, but I probably wouldn't recommend using it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.